CJ, I guess is what I'm going to call you. He's got a lot of setup here for a question. I'm not going to read through all this, guys. Anybody watching this can read through the questions if you'd like. I'm just going to get cut right to the chase, which is how would you approach making this decision? What matters and what doesn't? And what are the pros and cons of each approach? And so essentially he's asking, he's got a brand site that he wants to utilize some of the other content and, content assets that he has out there. And he was considering creating separate like satellite feeder sites to use to kind of push traffic from those sites into his main entity, but they're all tied together. So I'm going to give you a very brief answer and then let Marco expand on this a lot more because he's the our entity guru. But I would say no, keep all of those feeder sites essentially within the same brand. So either if you want separate websites for each one of them because you want different design, and that kind of stuff, different functionality for each one of those sites, that's perfectly fine. I would use subdomains of the primary asset, the primary entity, the primary website. I would use subdomains if you want separate websites, but that way they're all still tied to the brand. They're physically connected to the brand through the domain, right? And then I would still make sure that you consistently brand all of those so that you're not ambiguating the entity. That's number one. But if you're not worried about different design options and functionality for each one of those types of sites, then you should, and I Marco mentioned this prior to us starting the webinar, but I totally agree. You should keep them as inner pages. You will get more benefit by building out, you could even build silo structures for those types of content types within the site and use it that way. You get more SEO benefit using inner pages than you do from subdomains, but subdomains will give you some additional options that you wouldn't be able to use with inner pages. So either one of those are going to be the better approaches than trying to build separate websites. And then Marco can talk more about how you can utilize MGYB to help with a lot of this fulfillment and to get the most results that you can from this sort of a structure.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about is we clone the money site, right? And so if he's got these different parts of the company, sections of the company, however it is that it's going to be structured, I definitely go with inner pages with companion inner pages on the G side and drive stack targeting those keyword sets. So he wants more SERP real estate, right? But I would argue that what you actually want is to go further up for your top level keyword, right? The market level keyword, because what we've seen from that approach is that when you start targeting that top market level keyword, is it brings everything else up. So you'll be ranking for a whole lot of keywords that you didn't even think about just because you targeted that top level category. And then when you see that there's keywords that are sticking, maybe second page, maybe towards the bottom 9, 10, you can isolate those. I mean, we have the webinars at MGYB that show how to add power to your drive stack and push that power over to the website. So I would say focus on that so that your website, your main brand, your entity produces as much power as possible and brings up as many keywords as possible, and you add those inner pages. The only way that I would go to a subdomain or to a separate website is if it were just a completely different part of the business that would break up the semantic relevance if it were included on the money site. Now, if it doesn't, if everything is totally related, then you put that in an inner page, and what you do is individual schema for each one of those inner pages that relates those pages to the main brand. Look at what all of these different companies do. Look at what Google does. Google definitely takes advantage of the subdomains, right? They go the subdomain route. That's one way. Another way, Apple has it all on the main domain. Amazon has a lot of this stuff on their main domain. What I would say is you get a whole lot more power, and you'll be ranking for a whole lot more keywords a lot quicker if you add the power to the G site and companion drive stack and push it over to the money site, because then everything benefits, right? everything that's on that route, all of those inner pages, when you're pushing all of that power, the entire website is going to benefit from all of your efforts. That's how I would approach this.
Yeah, the only thing I agree, but like, for example, the glossary site is one of the examples that he's talking about. I think that would be better suited on a subdomain, like glossary dot whatever your domain is, only because I think that's kind of, I mean, again, you could do it on an inner page or even a separate category within the site. I think that's kind of more of a reference type thing, could be on a subdomain. But like Marcus said, is if you can work with it in the existing like layout, the design, that kind of stuff of the existing site, then you can accomplish that with inner page stuff. But the second best option would be subdomains, in my opinion, but not separate websites altogether, because you want to make sure that you're continuing to tie all of those together. Structured data could do all of that together as well. If you have proper structured data across all of them, you're going to be tying the entities together, or the entity together, through all those different assets anyways. So that was a good question. Very long setup.